My name is John Passfield, and the title of this reading will be John and Lewis Carroll, Video 5, The Queen of Hearts News Story. So here is my book, John and Lewis Carroll, wonderful, fiction by John Passfield. Picture of John on the cover in his backyard. A door opens up, a door that has not been there until this moment. So here's a summary of the novella on the back cover. As John the writer sits beside his pond polishing a chapter of his new book, a door opens up in the grass and the characters from Alice in Wonderland and Alice Through the Looking Glass peer up at him from the darkness. John tumbles down through a hole in the ground to Wonderland, where the characters are busy rehearsing scenes for a third Alice book, which they hope John will persuade their author to write. But what if their author, Lewis Carroll, has other ideas? So they're rehearsing scenes for a third Alice book. Here's the original book. It's one book, but it contains the two Alice books. There's only two historically. Lewis Carroll only wrote two. This is called the Annotated Alice because it has notes in it about all the interesting conundrums, I call them, I guess, that Lewis Carroll came up with. But there's two Alice books in it, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass. So my book is a time travel. The characters bring John back to their own time and ask John to talk to Lewis Carroll, who doesn't seem to be cooperating very well, and ask him to write a third Alice book. Now, in chapter 3 of my book, the Mock Turtle takes John aside and tells him about the life that he's leading. In chapter 4, this chapter, the chapter which I will read now, the Queen of Hearts does the same thing. She takes John aside and tells him about the story she'd like him to write. Unlike the Mock Turtle, the Queen of Hearts has imagined a story in which she would rather be a character than the story in which she's been living in the Alice books. So let's have a look at the story that she asked John to present to Lewis Carroll in hopes that Lewis Carroll will write the story for her. So let's go to chapter 4 then. Now, there are 3 scenes that she shows John, and we'll start with the first one on page 21. Here it is. Okay, so John and the Queen of Hearts. Time has taught me a valuable lesson, John. I'm standing beside the Queen of Hearts. I have come to feel about the books, the Alice books, I mean, that their harsh, even violent nature brought out the worst in me. See the scene I've imagined, John? Now stand up straight when you stand beside me. That slouch of yours is beginning to get on my nerves. It shows disrespect for what I used to be. See me standing there in the middle, John. No longer will I be a queen. We gaze on the shepherdess in the midst of a pastoral scene. See how my double holds the baby sheep, John? I'm told the peasants call them lambs. Its fur, its fleece is so soft, John, as I hold it in my hands. A calm center for the next Alice book, John. Pastoral, bucolic, serene. Now, I must leave you to become my new-made self, John. Do you have pencils? Do you have paper? You'd best take notes so you can describe to our author what you have seen. The palace censor will look them over before you go. She leaves my side and becomes herself as she slides into the shepherdess in the midst of the scene. She hugs the tiny lamb. The harsh lines fade from her face as she becomes pastoral, bucolic, serene. Okay, that's the first scene. A couple of pages of imagery that comment on this scene and the other scenes, and then we go on to the second scene of John and the Queen of Hearts. I stand beside the Queen of Hearts, the shepherdess to be. I've learned so much, John, since I've been poor, been a peasant, had nothing at all. Don't lean forward. It makes you look passive. Thrust back your shoulders and puff out your chest. Whole regiments have rushed to death on my mimed command. There seems to be a meeting. The sheep are milling around. Many shepherds hold their crooks and watch the shepherdess, the Queen's pastoral double, whom the Queen of Hearts wishes in the next Alice book to be, climb up onto the stone wall of the sheepfold. The people, the poor, the peasants, John. says the Queen of Hearts beside me, have been trampled into the earth by those who ruled them from above with their disdain, their lofty palaces and haughty pride. I'm urging, John, the peasants to rebel. The shepherds move in closer, positioning themselves to hear every one of the precious words. The sheep ebb and flow among the crowd. Well, this is where I'll join them, John. I have a speech to make. She leaves my side and slides into her shepherd self. Her face clouds over. She raises her voice in anger. The veins stand out on her neck. She seizes a shepherd's crook and shakes it in the air and utters a bloodthirsty yell. The crowd of peasant shepherds roars out a lusty reply. Down with monarchy, up with anarchy, let us rebel. And then that's the second section with John and the Queen. Then there's a few more pages of imagery that comment on these sections of hoped for story by the Queen. And here's the third one. The revolution has been amazing, John. Kings and queens begging at street corners, cattle and pigs in elegant ballrooms, peasants looting jewel-encrusted thrones. I'm sweeping away the scourge of the upper class, John. I'm turning single-handed society upside down. I'm standing beside the Queen of Hearts. We stand and watch her shepherdess double, who sits on a stump in the midst of a field. Two burly shepherds stand like guards on either side. The people love me, John. They follow me. They see me as their savior, their guide. They see me in the cleansing role of a brand new broom. Watch your slouch. It's getting worse. So a little backbone, if you please. In my former life, I would have had you flogged. In the field, there are many stumps, chopping blocks they look like to me, and at each block a person is being forced to kneel. The people want an election, John. They want me to elect me, as their queen. It would disappoint them so should I refuse. Beside each prisoner at each chopping block there stands a man with a gleaming axe. The people, the peasant shepherds are poised to make a baptismal leap, John. I must go now and give the awaited cue. The Queen of Hearts, the shepherd queen, strides briskly into the scene. She slides into herself. She sits on the stump, the throne, and the shepherds, the peasants, all bow down on their knees. A guard holds up a crown as the people cheer. The sheep are milling in disarray. She snatches a crook from one of the guards and raises it high up in the air. Off with their heads, she shrieks, and a circle of axes descends in unison as they gleam on a circle of aristocratic shepherd necks. So those are the three scenes that the Queen of Hearts would like to act in, to actually live in, if there is a third Alice book, which she hopes John will convince Lewis Carroll to write. We've all heard the phrase, history repeats itself. When I was a teenager, we were sure that it wasn't true. I'm 80 years old. I've lived through quite a lot of what we commonly call history, events that affect large numbers of people. I was born a few days before the atomic age began in 1945, and while I was a boy and a teenager, the older people of my society had lived through 2 world wars and a worldwide depression. About half of my male teachers had been soldiers in the Second World War. When I was in high school, our study of history included the events of the first half of the 20th century, and the assumption at that time, was that in knowing the causes of the Great Depression and the 2 world wars, we could avoid such catastrophic events, human-made events in the future. We believed that history would not repeat itself. The Queen of Hearts in this book is a character poised between 2 stories. There's a story in which she has been living, written for her by Lewis Carroll, and the story that she would like Lewis Carroll to write for a new book, a new Alice book. She can imagine the new story, the alternative story, with her double playing her part, but she cannot live the story unless Lewis Carroll, her author, agrees to write it. You might recognize some of the elements of the story that she imagines from history. A queen who plays at being a shepherdess, the call to violence by a shrieking demagogue, the beheading of those who are seen to be the enemy, which amounts to the genocide of a whole class. I would characterize the decades of my youth, that of the 1950s and the early 1960s, as a time of great optimism. Excuse me. We truly believed, as does the Red Queen in the first image scene that she shows John, that because we understood the causes of the Great Depression, we would have no more catastrophic worldwide depressions. We truly believed that because all of the major nations of the world were participating in the United Nations, we would have no more devastating wars. I'm reading these passages in the year 2025. I could give a list of 10, 20, or 30 of the major world events between the years 1963, with the assassination of President John F. Kennedy, and the year 2025, in which I'm reading this, but I won't do so. I will simply say that by the time the Queen has explained her preferred story to John, a story which contains 3 image scenes, one in which she expects to not only have a whole new story, but a whole new character, we realize the truth of the old French saying, plus ça change, plus c'est la même chose. The more things change, the more they are the same. However, this is chapter 4, and the book contains 10 chapters. If the Queen of Hearts' preferred story was the only one in this book, it would stand as my comment on the history of the past 80 years. Perhaps pessimistic readers will stop at the end of chapter 4, while optimistic readers will read on. What are the other stories that these characters are going to ask John to ask Lewis Carroll to put into a third Alice book? So here again is my book, John and Lewis Carroll. Wonderful. It's available on Amazon, where there's more information. It's available on Rocks Mills Press, which is my publisher's website, where there's more information. On my website, johnpassfield.ca, there's a planning notebook, which I recorded as I planned and wrote the novella, and there's a reflective journal, which I wrote as I was polishing the novellas. Those 2 books are free at johnpassfield.ca just by clicking on the cover icon. So have a look if you're interested in the topic. Lastly, I'll just say thank you for watching this video.